The Machine City. I never dreamed very intensely, or if I did, never remembered it. From childhood, I'd only remember images or insulated, isolated events. My dreams never felt substantial, never really felt like there were any weight to them. But this dream was different. It didn't have the flavor of a dream. It was more like I was observing in the spirit, watching something real but beyond my ability to understand. I felt like I was in an unformed land, like where I used to envision when my stepfather would put me to bed. The kind of place where you could fly if you wanted to hard enough, where your body wasn't real, where you didn't have to be alone. Maybe not alone enough. That place had been there for me, helping to take me outside where I was, and I was there again now. I was floating, my feet far off the ground. It was day, but not bright, and there was a heavy, acrid, industrial-smelling mist everywhere, laying as a fog bank on the earth, stinging my face, stinging my lungs. It tasted horrible, like chemical waste, but with a weirdly organic texture. I drifted in the light breeze for what felt like days, but it might have been forever or just minutes. Below me the fog cleared in spots, and I could sense as well as see what was below. I felt a sense of pressure, like air was being pulled at me from all sides, like something was filling the world and trying to drive me out. The sky was a sickly yellow, no clouds, no features on the horizon. Below I began to make out shapes. It was a city. Not a city like I'd ever seen, but rather a city built with no human in mind. There were structures, looming, brutish, utilitarian, broken up by smaller buildings that were scattered in a highly organized chaos. There were no walkways, no roads. The structures had no doors, no windows, just pipes, smooth, featureless, joining the monolithic towers and squat squares of what looked like stone. Here and there, the monotony was broken by what resembled a smokestack thrusting into the sky, and the air was filled with the steady thrum of machinery. The buildings seemed to be vibrating, shaking with momentous, intense activity. There was, all around, the feeling of something oppressive. Just as in the waking world there was a feeling of loss, of emptiness, here in this nightmare cityscape there was a feeling of fullness, a presence that threatened to overfeed my senses, the world too real, too defined, full of something. What? I just kept thinking of a poem. In my dream drifting I couldn't remember the words, but I remember how they'd haunted me when I was young. A poem. Where the fuck was I? Was I in hell, or... The horizon never came. The city just went on, spreading out as far as I could see, completely flat, except for the chimneys belching their payload of harsh poisons. There were no lights below, no sign of movement, just the subtle juddering of the buildings as they vibrated and shook. Reminded me of the motor in my stepfather's Yamaha. He'd taken me on many rides, many. What was that poem? With a start, I realized that what I was seeing wasn't a city, but a machine. One enormous, infinite machine, stretching from below me to no termination point that I could see. There were individual parts, but they were all joined like cells in a body, singular units, inextricably linked. There were no city sounds, no jets overhead, no cars, just the incessant pounding, grinding groan of the machine city below. What was it for? After an indeterminate amount of time, the machinery began to thin, the buildings began to assume a circular shape and a more regular pattern. Looking closely, I saw what looked like veins, thousands of them, converging on the heart of the city machine. I drifted lower and I saw not veins, but rails, like monorail tracks, and vast transports hitching along on them. Each moving platform held people, tens of thousands of people, naked, beaming in ecstasy. They stood as if drugged, staring at the sky in joy and awe. They were holding hands, young girls, old men, teenage boys. All their awkwardness lost, all the cruelties forgiven, all love for each other forgotten. In reverie, they looked sublimely happy. The transports were grinding on, slowly at first, and then with increasing urgency to the heart of the city. There was a great structure that was as cyclopean as the rest of the city machine had been altogether. It looked like an arena. I looked at it in wonder, a building as large as a country. My mind couldn't comprehend the scale of the thing. It was simply outside the ability of my imagination. The vast walls were a solid metal. I'd seen it before, but where? Why couldn't I remember anything important? The walls were deceptively thin, no more than, say, a mile thick, which sounds like a lot, but compared to what I've seen is nothing. And in the center was a seething mass. Drifting in closer, I could see that it was row after endless row after endless row of great gears grinding together, gnashing, with blades interspersed. They were layered in such a way that they could cause the maximum trauma to any material that fell into it. As I watched, one after another, the transports approach the walls, and I knew, in the deepest place in my heart, that the place I'd worked so hard to hide, even from myself, and that it was there, and I knew what was going to happen. The transports raised up the walls in the thousands, wave after wave after wave, and they came to rest at the edge of the gnashing metallic chaos below. With a sudden lurch, the platforms tipped, one after another, tossing the masses into the teeth. It felt like rain. Hundreds, then thousands of people, holding hands as they pitched forward into the blades. They didn't even scream. In fact, I thought I heard them singing. Looking through tears to the far end of my sight, I saw the transport stretching back further than I could see, each rattling closer to the city machine, each one filled with people, filled with fuel for the machines. Fuel. And I remembered that poem finally. Daddy, a bag full of God. And I knew what that feeling was, that fullness. It was in the acidic air all around me, in the metallic din of the surface below, and the placid, timid joy on the faces of the people that filled the transports. I knew this place was full of God. I woke screaming, and I didn't stop. I couldn't. Because that feeling and the grinding, thrumming God sound, it's never gone away. I hear it every moment of every single day. That sound, it's in everything.